Hey everybody, Tom the ColourBlind Quilter here, and in today's video we are going to be having a little bit of a trunk show, as in I'm going to be looking at some of the stuff that I got up to in 2023. Now I am glad to report that compared to 2022, I did actually manage to get some quilting done. 2022 was a really bad year for quilting and nothing got done. 2023, I got some stuff done. Not as much as I would have liked. There were still a few issues going on, sadly. However, I did get some sewing done. So I'm going to take you through some of the things that I got up to and then have a little look at what's coming up for 2024. So in 2020, I was a pattern tester for a pattern called Lida and Liza by the Quilty architect. And sadly, due to illness, I wasn't able to finish the pattern test. And so the pattern kind of got shoved into a corner and forgotten about. And it was one of these patterns that it was a bit tricky and a bit fidgety. So I actually did that thing where you deliberately don't do it because you think it's difficult or it's loads of work and all that rubbish that we tell ourselves. So I thought, no, enough's enough. I'm going to get this out and I'm going to see how far along I am with this, and then see if we can get it finished. Now, this is one of these patterns where actually as you're cutting and everything, it makes two quilts out of one set of fabric, the way that he's written the pattern. It's very clever. And I was much further along with one set and completely further behind the other set than I thought I was. So you can see in the picture, it's made up of all these strips. And basically, one quilt is like this, where the solid bars are on the bottom, with the thin bars on the top, and then the other quilt is flipped and it's the solid bars on the top, the thin strips on the bottom. And so when you're cutting these pieces, it gives you half for one and half for the other. This is a fidgety pattern. Like I said, there are some very small strips in here, and making long strip units like this and pressing them open is not really one of my fortes for accuracy. I tried really hard with this. I had seam guides on, I had seam tape and all of this to try and get this hard, but these were really small, fiddly strips. And so even when I was getting the sewing bang on, I was finding that the pressing was really difficult because they just wavy. So it was quite a challenge to get these done. But I got them done and I persevered and I pushed through it and I ended up with this lovely pile. But because they've been sitting for so long, you can see they're totally fraying like mad. So that was a big problem during this. And one of the perils, I guess, of leaving something to lie for ages. But you can see I persevered, got it together, didn't make any mistakes, and pinned like mad to keep everything in place, because I thought, I've gone this far, I've done all the work, I've tried really hard, so I don't usually pin, but I'm going to pin. And laid it out, kept laying it out, kept making sure, double checking. So probably, to be fair, it took me 3 times as long, but I was determined not to make a mistake doing this. But you can see how it looks, and it is a really cool pattern. It is really cool. It's just a bit too fidgety for my liking. You know, there's one of these patterns that I will make and probably never make again. But it's still great, and that's no disrespect or anything to the designer. It's just not for me. I don't like this level of fiddle. More pinning. Still more pinning. Even more pinning. But there you go. You can see the final unit. And this now has to be trimmed up, and there's very specific trimming instructions, and it did take me a little bit of time because I really wanted to make sure that it was going to be even and everything was going to be as it should be. And I sadly don't have a picture of both of the quilts finished. That's as far as I got with taking pictures. Now, this next project, I actually started making this, I think, in 2020 as well. And then it was another quilt pattern that I talked myself into thinking was really complicated and really difficult, and it really wasn't. But what happened was it's a gift for a friend. It's still not finished, and I didn't want the person to see it, so I didn't really do any videos or anything about it. I was keeping it secret. But then I realized that it was going to be way too small because this person is quite tall. So it's like, oh, what can I do to make this quilt bigger? Because it was one of these one-size quilt patterns. So it's like, oh, I know, I'll make a border. Now, this quilt has particular things in it. You'll see in a second when I show you it. And I wanted to really try and emulate it. So let me just forward. So this is the quilt. This is Art Deco. And I'll leave a link to the pattern in the show notes. Now you can see in the middle there how there's the kind of deconstructed log cabin idea. I was like, did I just put a cream border on this? Did I just put a purple border on this, an orange? What did I do? Couldn't think. And I thought, I know, I'm going to emulate. Hopefully my mouse will show on the screen, but I'm going to emulate the central section where these lines are. And I'm going to turn that into a border with mitered corners. So I came up with these strip units and joined them together, worked really hard in getting these stripes accurate because I wanted it to really pop. And I did basically put them around the entire quilt with mitered corners. And you can see this is me. I was gloating here because my mitered corners had lined up beautifully, despite a little bit of a hiccup with the measurements. They worked out perfectly and I was so happy with myself. I don't have a picture of the full finished quilt because it's not finished. Next up, this quilt. Wow, this quilt has spent more time sitting around in my house than anything else. Like genuinely, I started making this, goodness knows when, 2018, 2019, 2020, I don't know. I've forgotten. It's literally sat for so long. This was a housewarming present for a friend who has since moved and sold that house and moved in somewhere else. And the thing that frustrates me about this is that it lay in a box as pieces, and then it lay in a box as a finished quilt top, and then it lay in a box as a quilt sandwich, and then I think the problem I had, and I can see the irony in this, is that I just really did not know how to quilt this quilt. Like, I had all these grand ideas, but this quilt went totally wonky, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because everything is highlighting and emulating the wonkiness. So I thought, bugger it. I'm just going to do a wavy serpentine down, and I'll do horizontally, then I'll do vertically, and it will be spot on. So I finally quilted this quilt. Is it finished? No, it's sitting in a box. Are you spotting a pattern here? It's quilted, it's not trimmed. Oh no, that's a lie. I'm sorry. It is trimmed, and to stop it fraying, I put a zigzag stitch around the outside of it. But it's there waiting on binding. And do you know, this is how close I got to the binding. I actually got the fabric for the binding out, changed my mind, even though I'd already cut it all, found the grey fabric that's in this. It was really creased because it's been sitting for a long time, and thought, yeah, that's going to be nicer than the blue that I was using. So I spent ages pressing those creases out. They were like rubber. They did not want to come out of the fabric. I've spent ages pressing it out and then hung it on a door, thinking I will cut that tomorrow because my back was just really, really sore from standing ironing for an hour. And it hung on that door for 3 months, and now it's back in the box. Folded very neatly so it doesn't get creased again. Now, moving onwards. So then I started planning my videos for 2023, unbeknown what was coming around the corner for me, but this is a set of fabric that I ordered for several projects. There is baby quilts in here, and there's a couple of other things in here. And this is my color palettes that I picked, and they're baby quilts. And I wanted to move away from traditional things and do something maybe a bit more modern, maybe a bit more interesting than just your kind of standard blues and pinks, you know. So I picked this really nice color palette. I really, really liked it. I spent ages pairing things up and getting them all organized and laid out with my Kona card. Everything's got little masking tapes on them, and they are ready to go. And there. This is me being all fancy with my camera, but I really, really enjoy these colors. Let's not go there yet. So I didn't get a chance to make the videos, but my partner's friend had a baby, so I did get a chance to make one of the quilts that I was using, and it's a kind of building blocks pattern. And unfortunately, I had taken quite a few pictures of it, and I can't find them. But I have got the videos that I made of it. So that will be coming out in a future video this year about baby quilts. But I really like this pattern. This color pool. It just looked really nice and happy, and it sits on the printer behind me, desperately waiting to be sewn. Now, yes, let's move on to this. So in 2023, I kicked off season 2 of Behind the Blocks, and I was really organized, got everything all cut up, everything's labeled and everything in its beautiful piles ready to go. And the season's had a few hiccups along the way. We had quite a sizable delay because I got an eye infection stroke problem that lasted several months throughout 2023. Got to the point where I couldn't look at the sewing machine or a computer screen without the room spinning round in circles. So it really kind of put a kibosh in the season, but I managed to pick it up and finish 5 blocks. The quilt season should be wrapping up, but it's not, sadly. We're only halfway through due to my health issues. Not much I can do about it, I'm afraid. And so I'm having fun with this and discovering a few hiccups along the way. C'est la vie. But it's coming along nicely. So let's have a look at some of the blocks. So this is the very first block in the series, the pinwheel, classic pinwheel. The whole concept of the series is learning how to make half square triangles and how they work in blocks and dealing with some of the issues and things that come along with making half square triangles. So that's the first block in the series. This was... now this is extra wide backing fabric that I got in a clearance sale. And I had a very particular plan for these. I had, in my 2021 trunk show mentioned, I had 15 UFOs that I needed to deal with. I didn't really know what to do with them or how to back them, whether I was going to sell them, donate them to charity, or keep them, or use them as video backdrops. So as part of me getting organized, spoiler alert, there's still UFOs, I bought these extra wide fabrics and I had it all planned out that I could get at least 9 quilts made out of these 2 blocks. And so my plan was to get them all into the same phase, so get them all, the backing cut, get them all sandwiched, get them all ready to quilt, have the decision on what the quilts were going to be, the quilting designs were going to be, and then all bound. And yeah, you know, health issues. So that is still waiting to be done. And it was 15 at the end of 2021. It's now 20. So then I started trying to get back into sewing because of my eye problems. I really was not able to do a lot of stuff for very long. And I wanted desperately to sew, but did not want to set my eyes back by sewing for hours and making them sore. So I tried to think of things I could do that were like 5-6 minutes. And as soon as my eyes started to feel tired, I could just go away, leave it. But it wasn't going to be right in the middle of sewing long seams or anything like that. So I started playing with orphan blocks that I found. I had a bit of a tidy up and a bit of a sort through piles of fabric and orphan blocks and scraps and just general mess. And I found these from the Chromatic Crackle pattern that I pattern tested back in 2020 by Ahhh Quilting. And these were blocks that I made that were, I got completely carried away and made way too many blocks and then realized that these were all surplus to requirements. So they just sat in a box. And so I didn't quite have enough to make a quilt, so I had to make a few more of these blocks. And so it was really fun because it's a really fun pattern to sew this one. And I always get lots of compliments about this. And sadly, I can't take the credit because it's not my design. But I do enjoy sewing this one. So I got these out and was trying to think, like, what can I do with them? How could I lay them out? Could I make enough for like a dog blanket, a baby blanket? Because it's a really cool pattern for a baby blanket, this. And, you know, the colors are quite modern, so it would look quite nice. So I played with them and I was like, can I do something like that? Would that work? But then I didn't have enough of them in the right spaces and stuff, and so faffed about for a bit. Eventually came to this and kind of liked how some of it met, some of it didn't met, and then that started to annoy me how some of it met, some of it didn't met. So I kind of put it aside. And then we moved on to block 2 of Behind the Blocks, the Jacob's Ladder, one of my favorite quilt blocks to make. And I love the colors in this one, you know, turned out nicely. And then this actually comes before Behind the Blocks too. These pictures I have sorted in a weird order, but this was my tidying. You know, it really looks tidy, doesn't it? But this was me. I have all these plastic boxes and everything just gets shoved in them and I don't know what's what. And it's like big bits, little bits, small bits, meters and meters of fabric shoved in these boxes. So I thought, I'm going to sort this out. I'm going to see what all this crap is and see what I can do with it. And I have these 2 boxes here, these grey boxes that are from IKEA, and they're for like their wardrobe system, so you can sort like your socks and your t-shirts and all that stuff, you know, like really organized people have in their tidy, neat cupboards. Not me. So I started sorting these scraps. I had a big, massive bag of scraps that I just used to throw everything into. I just sorted them to see what I could come up with. And then this was my pile. Like all of this was shoved into all these tiny little boxes. And I don't know what I was thinking because I had loads of these big boxes. And so this was my kind of attempt at finding homes for the big bits of fabric so that I could use the smaller boxes for strips and orphan blocks and smaller pieces of fabric. So I had a good job tidying up, and like there's just so much fabric in there. I haven't a clue where half of that came from. But still, it was tidy, and it's very tidy now. And then here's some of that quilt, you know, the one I was talking about that's been in a box for more time than it's been anything else. So these were some of the leftover blocks. I was like, oh, I wonder what I could do with these. So I sewed these together into these 4 quadrants, as you can see. And then I found from another pattern test in 2020, I found all these leftover triangles, which I did press after this, and sewed them into diamonds. Here's some more of those blocks that I found from the Chromatic Crackle. So this was, I had like 2 hours where I just sat and sewed all these things together. So I sewed the Chromatic Crackle blocks. I sewed some 4 patches together. I sewed some rail fences together. I sewed some diamonds together. I found some rather random things that I cut up and sewed together. And this is my new little kind of backup travel sewing machine. I got a Burnett. I think it's a Burnett Craft or Academy and BO5. So this is me just came downstairs out of the mess of fabric in my office upstairs and sat at the dining room table with all these boxes and just sewed for 2 hours, and it was fabulous. That was the longest I had sewn since like 2021. And you can see the Burnett, the BO5 Crafter. It's a great little machine, mechanical, no whistles or bells. It's just straightforward sewing, and I really like it. This is my partner's Lego here. And so, I was really chuffed with this. This was a day's sewing, and you can see I took those remnants of that other quilt and made these random blocks, the diamonds. I sewed these 4 patches together, various different sizes. I've got these rail fence sort of things, and I was really pleased with myself. And then we had block 3 of Behind the Blocks, which was the Friendship Star. And then again, this is another fun block that I really enjoy making. Now, also in 2023, I took part, in fact, I was invited to take part in the Christmas collaboration project with 11 other quilters from around the world. And Kristen at Scrap Fabric Love got me roped into this. And so the idea was we all shared a fat quarter of ugly Christmas fabric. So you would get 12 Christmas fabrics. You had to design a quilt, make a video, and then you would do a giveaway and give the quilt to the winner and ship it to whoever won it in the world in time for Christmas. Now, the problem I had, and I don't have a picture of the fabrics until they're cut up, but I don't work with pattern fabrics. I always work with solid fabrics. So for me to design something was quite tricky because a lot of these fabrics did not go together. They were similar colors. There was blues, there was greens, there was themes, but I found it very difficult to coordinate. So I came up with this very simple block that was going to showcase a piece of the fat quarter and then just have lots of background in it. And this was my test block, getting my sizes right. And so you can see here are the 12 fabrics, and you can see they're quite a mixed bunch. There's lots of lovely fabrics in here. Like, I don't know why people call them ugly. Like, some of these are lovely, but lots of stuff in here that I would never usually use. This little grey Scandi Christmas tree beside the Nutcracker Soldier, that was mine. So I had lots of fun making these, and I kind of had this idea to lay them out like this and then put sashing in between them. So you can see this is me mid-sashing, and I lay it out because I generally have a habit of sewing the wrong sashing on the wrong bit, which is what happened. And if you're interested in the story of this quilt, because there's quite a lot of shenanigans, the Christmas elves were up to all manner of mischief in my studio. I'll put a link in the description below so you can watch the video and find out about the shenanigans with this one. But it came together really nicely, and I was really happy. Then I was like, oh, it's not big enough. What can we do? So I was like, let's addition some fabric for borders. So I went and raided my Christmas stash, and I found the red, I found the green, I found a solid red, I found some navy, I found some green. I was like, the solid red was nice, but it just felt a bit wrong putting a solid fabric with all these other fabrics. So I eventually went for this green. And I wasn't sure when I was cutting it, and it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, please don't look rubbish. And as soon as I sewed that on, I was like, yes, that's the one. That's the one. I loved it the minute I sewed it on. And that was the finished quilt top there. And I was so happy with this. It turned out fabulous. Really, really pleased with myself. There you go, just a bit of a better view. Also, my studio this year, I got this curtain pole with these curtains so I could hang video quilts up for video backdrops, and also so I could use it as a design wall. I got some curtain bump to put up here so I could put blocks up. And yeah. So then I came back to these Chromatic Crackle blocks, and I finally decided what I wanted to do with them. I wanted to put sashing in between them and then just make a kind of square baby quilt sort thing. So I got them out, cut some sashing, and then promptly found sashing that would have fit that I didn't need to cut. Oops. And there you have it. And it turned out really well. But can you see the mistake? Now, I put a reel about this on Instagram and YouTube the other day, and the first comment was like, looks great, but apart from that bottom left corner. And what actually happened was I had sewn the first 2 rows during the day when it was nice and bright and it was fine, and then I sewed the last row at night time and the lighting wasn't bright enough, so I could not see the difference between the pink and the purple, or the blue, whatever the color is. And I put it in upside down, and I was so annoyed, but I could not be bothered taking it out. And so I just thought, fine, it's a little Easter egg, whatever, it's done. But yeah, it turned out great, and it's a lovely size for a play blanket or kids blanket. So yeah, that's now in the UFO pile. Block number 4 behind the blocks was the ribbon star, and I do enjoy this one as well, which led me to making some designs. So part of the series, I make example quotes showing you what you could do with the block, and sometimes it's just the block, or other times I add other things and other elements to it to show you what's possible with that block. And I loved this one so much that I came up with 3 designs, and then in the middle of making one of them, every time I make one of these videos, I end up with 6 more quilts to make because I just love everything. Oh, this is a carrot cake that I made for my mum's birthday, and it's absolutely delicious. I love carrot cake. Just had to share that. Then moving on to block number 5 of behind the blocks, a churn dash. Again, another favorite of mine. I love the things that you can do with this block, and this turned out beautifully. I was very happy with this one. And then there's another story for you. During the pandemic, or just at the end of the pandemic, actually, I decided that I was going to get new sewing tables. So I got like a oak worktop, like a butcher's block worktop, and had it cut into 2 of these tables. And I spent, days sanding and varnishing and all that for them. And then they promptly sat in my garage, or garage, as we say in the UK, for quite some time. And then finally, I was like, oh, I really should just finish these. Like, I bought the legs for them, had the legs for ages. They were all ready to go. Like, and my other sewing table was an IKEA table, and it was starting to get really wobbly as you were sewing. It was really annoying. And this was much sturdier. So I finally finished. I mean, literally, I'm so embarrassed to say it took me about 6 minutes to sew the legs on, to screw the legs on. And I was just like, wow, how frustrating is that? Like, I'd sat and just been unloved and needing to be finished. And it literally took 6 minutes. But in my head, it was this big, massive, difficult task. How silly. Anyway, so that turned out. And it's so much nicer than the IKEA table that I had. It's much sturdier. The sewing machine doesn't move as you're sewing on it. It's lovely. And I have another one that's off camera that you can't see, which is behind me now, which is my cutting table. And it's actually, didn't realize this until I cut for the first time on it, that the IKEA desks were just a little bit smaller than my big cutting mat. And the cutting mat fits perfectly on these desks. So there's no more as you get to the end that it falls off the edge because the table's not wide enough, which seems like a silly small thing, but, made me happy. Now, here's me finishing off in a panic the Christmas quilt. I had a beautiful red fleece for the back of this. I hadn't used it before because it was a new fleece. And I cut it up on that carpet, and it just went everywhere. It left red fibers absolutely everywhere. And it was all up the walls. It had stuck to the walls with static. It was all over me. It was all over the quilt. I was like, what on earth am I going to do? So I had to zigzag the edge and then wash it to try and get rid of all the fluff in it. So it's so soft, but it's really just annoying to work with. So anyway, this was me making a sandwich after fixing that. And then for this one, I really wasn't sure again what to quilt this, because I think it's easy to take a simple design like this and overpower it with quilting. So I was like, what could I do that's kind of maybe a bit Christmassy, but it's maybe just a bit different? So I ended up using a 3-step zigzag on my sewing machine. This quilted so fast. I mean, literally, like 30 minutes of this was done. And all I did was I used the edge of my walking foot down the seam on either side of a seam, and mostly in the sashing, and I left the middle of the block empty, and it turned out so nicely. I got so many compliments about the quilting on this. You can see like the lines are just in groups of 2 or groups of 3. And like, it was just like, it's one of these moments where you're just like, it's so simple. I mean, it literally is just a straight line down the quilt, but it's a zigzag stitch. And I was just like, it just turned out so well. I was just like, oh, I wish I'd known about that stitch years ago. Like that 15 UFOs would have been finished. So I was so pleased, and it turned out beautifully. And then I was on a roll. It was Christmas and I had time, and I was like, oh. So again, 2020 seems to be the year that I sewed lots of things that never got finished. I found this table runner, and I don't actually have a picture of it in this. And I would try and put one in the edit of the full runner. But basically I had quilted it and hated how I quilted it. I tried to be, it's like a half hexagon based runner. And I had tried to be really fancy going around the hexagon, and it just, it wasn't working for me. So I was watching videos on YouTube, and I saw somebody doing a table runner, and they basically did 1/2-inch straight line quilting. So I think you call them matchsticks. And I was just like, that's a really good idea, because it makes it lie really flat. It makes it really rigid. So it's great for a table runner. It's just like, of course, I'm going to have to do that. So I spent like 25 minutes unpicking quilting, and then did this, and it was so nice. I really liked it. It just turned out beautifully. And I wanted it to fall. You can kind of see the hexagon a little bit here. It's a wee bit out of focus, but you can see it's like a half a star in a hexagon, half a hexagon. I wanted it to be falling in the middle of the star point. So I started there and just literally used my walking foot as a guide, and just sewed not even 15 minutes. I'm ashamed to say this sat for 4 years waiting to be quilted. And it was no problem. Now I've got to bind it, and it's odd angles. It's 60-degree angles. So that's going to be a fun one. So of course that's in the box now. Back to the Christmas collab quilt. We had the usual kind of, what should we bind this with? Should I do more green? Should I do the cream? And then I was like, I could make a really scrappy binding with the leftover Christmas fabrics. I could cut them into rectangles and have it striped all the way around. And I was like, didn't have time to do that, sadly. So I found in my stash this kind of candy cane striped fabric that I bought many years ago. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just saw it and really liked it. I was like, this is perfect for this project, because it had some of the colors that were in the fabrics, and it created a really nice frame around the quilt. So I whipped that together, and there you can see, like, it framed it so nicely. And like, I don't often kind of feel that proud when I finish something, but this I looked at, I was like, oh, this is really nice. I'm so pleased with this. And knowing that this was going to somebody else as a gift, as a prize, like the thought that I was going to go out in the world and keep somebody cozy, like I felt so proud of what I had made. And I love it. I love it. And I created it as a free pattern that went with the video. So if you like the design, it doesn't have to be Christmas. This would work with any fabrics. This would be great for leftovers, because you really don't need big pieces of fabric. You just need, 12, 14, however many colors of fabrics you want, and then background fabric. So this would be great for using up fat quarters or fat eighths. So yeah, if you want to see that, there's a link in the description, and in that video there's a link to the pattern that you can download for free. That's the infamous red fleece that made a mess, but you can see how nicely this stripy binding works. Just more shots of showing off the obligatory quilt swirl that I hate doing. Don't know why I do it, but I loved the quilt. It turned out so well. I was so pleased. And that's the final one. I gave it an iron by that point, so it was much flatter. And then for Christmas, this is the final thing for 2023. I after wanting these for many years, got some of these magic pins with the silicone things, and I love them. I so wish I had got them years ago. They're like so good. I mean, I do find it odd that the pictures make them look massive, and when you see them in real life, they're actually quite tiny, but they're really good. They're so easy to use, and so these have now become my daily pins. I say daily, like I sew daily, ha ha ha. Whenever I do sew and pin, these are the pins that I use. Yeah, that's what I was up to last year. Not very much. I know lots of other people have sewed loads more than me, but that was enough, and that was all that I could manage, and I was happy with it, and happy with how things turned out. Disappointed that other things didn't happen, frustrated that other things were delayed or put back, but I'm kind of looking forward in 2024 to learning some new stuff. I've got some goals, like I'm looking forward to trying to improve my skills on long strip units for sewing and pressing accuracy. And I've got some other goals that I'm working on for 2024 for myself. And then, yeah, that's it. So I hope that was interesting. You know, me waffling on for like 20, 40 minutes. Ooh, might have to edit some of that down. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was interesting. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you got up to last year. Send me some pictures or tag me on Instagram. Show me what you were sewing. And yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here with me, listening to my rambos. So take care, and I'll see you in the next video.